Hello ladies and gentlemen, once again this is Jeremy Smith, Photog J the Great. Today we're going to be looking at the Nikon D7100 as compared to the Canon 70D. This is definitely a comparison that a lot of you have been waiting to see. For all you Nikon and Canon fanboys and girls out there, I'm going to tell you right now, there is definitely not a winner per se between both these two. If you don't listen to any more of this review, this is the part that you need to know. Basically, both these cameras are very evenly matched. Which one is going to be better is really just going to come down to what you're shooting. Basically, if you are shooting, if you're shooting landscapes, or if you are shooting portraits, or anything like that, where a little bit higher image quality, a little bit higher dynamic range is going to be a benefit to you, and you do, slower and more deliberate, type of shooting, the Nikon is going to be the best camera to go with there. If you were shooting any type of action, any type of sports, in low light conditions, things like that, and you're looking for a good APS-C body, you don't want to have to spend, $2,000 or $3,000 or more on a higher end full frame camera or something that's much faster, then the 70D is going to be for you. It definitely wins in terms of speed. Now, image quality between these is extremely similar. I'm not going to show any of these samples in the video, but I will put them in the description below. And as far as video is concerned, which we're going to talk about that when we look at the cameras up close in a moment here, but as far as video is concerned, I actually think that each camera has its own unique advantage in terms of video, but once again, it just depends on what type of video you're shooting. So anyways, let's go ahead and let's look at both these cameras closer and in more detail. Okay guys, so I'm not going to go over every little picky detail on both these. Of course, I have posted Canon 70D and Nikon D7100 reviews, so take a look at those for more details. And I still am going to be making some future videos talking about the Wi-Fi options on both these in more detail also. But for right now, we're going to look at what kind of stands out between these two. One of the biggest differences between both these cameras, as I mentioned before, it's going to come down to really, what type of shooting you're doing. The Nikon D7100 is 24 megapixels. It does not have an anti-aliasing filter, and it does produce a little bit higher dynamic range. That's not something that I'm going to just go through a whole lot. It's something that, there's plenty of info on that on the web. I feel like I'd be beating a dead horse if I talked about that too much. As far as high ISO goes, honestly, I'm not really sure which of these does better. I took the samples, but I have not looked at them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post them in the description below, and I'm going to let you guys come to your own conclusions on that. I purposely did not look at those yet because I don't want to be, too biased in one direction. But as far as things like dynamic range, it's a proven fact. The Nikon certainly does better in that regard. With that being said, though, I think that image quality-wise, overall, yes, even though there is a marked difference on paper in the Nikon in that area, there's really, in practical use, you'd be very hard-pressed to tell the difference. So that's why I'm going to put more emphasis on the features between both these cameras. I did a little bit of testing with both of these, and one of the biggest things I saw as a difference is, of course, the speed on the Canon 70D. I shot with that camera on its continuous high mode, and I got a lot better performance out of it than I did the Nikon. So that's why I say if you're shooting sports, definitely go with the Canon there. On the Canon, I was able to take 12 images in a row in RAW before the buffer actually filled, and in JPEG I managed to get 38 images. So this is a huge difference compared to the Nikon. The Nikon shot 18 JPEG images, and that's in its full 24 megapixel resolution. And I only managed to get 6 RAW images out of the Nikon. As you guys know, the D7100 also has a crop mode. It has a 1.3 times crop factor, and that changes its continuous shooting speed from 6 frames a second up to 7 frames a second, which is the exact same speed as the 70D. In that mode, it gets you a little bit closer. It's kind of strange having a crop mode on a crop sensor camera, but anyways, it gets you a little bit closer, and the camera shoots at 15 megapixels there. Surprisingly, in that mode, even though it's 1 frame a second faster, I didn't actually see that big of a difference in terms of actual buffer performance. We went from 18 images in a burst in JPEG to 25 images in a burst whenever we were in the crop mode. And on RAW, it only slightly improved from 5 frames and it bumped up to 6 frames. So not that big of a difference actually. I was actually expecting to see a substantial difference in the RAW. I was thinking it'd go up to 8 or 10, but it didn't. So that's interesting. So definitely, yeah, if you shoot sports or anything like that, definitely go with the Canon. There's just no doubt in my mind there. Autofocus wise, both these cameras do extremely well. The Nikon has a 39-point focus system. The Canon has a 19-point autofocus system. I'm going to shoot with both these in real-world shooting scenarios, things like that, and kind of see which one I like better. But at this time, I'm going to pretty much consider that to be a draw. They're very, very similar autofocus systems. I used to like to joke that all the Canons shot like this, but on the newer Canons, that has not been the case. The 70D is using the same 19-point autofocus system from the 7D, and it's 19 points, but they all are cross-type AF points, which is really nice. The D7100 is 39 points, but the points in the middle 3 columns or so are the ones that are your cross-type points on the 7100. So you don't have any cross-type points at the edges of the frame. You end up with 15 AF points being cross-type. But overall, very similar coverage of the frame. I do like how on the Nikon, if you go into the 1.3 crop mode, you actually end up with AF points going all the way from the far left to the far right of the frame. So even at the very edge of your picture, you still have AF points. So I think that's kind of nice. But overall, on that, I would consider it to be a draw, and I'll shoot with these a bit more and see how they do there. Moving right along, I'll take a look at the video options that we are given on both these. Now, one of the biggest things about the 70D, of course, is its new autofocus system that allows it to autofocus in video mode. As you guys will already know, the 70D is obviously going to blow the Nikon way out of the water in terms of continuous autofocus mode because of the way their AF system works, which I talked a bit more about that in my 70D review. But if you're not using the autofocus, you know, I think that you can still be very happy with the Nikon. Let's see here. We're going to look at the actual movie settings. The Nikon actually does give you a few video options that the Canon doesn't. One thing I'll mention is the 7100 actually does have a clean HDMI output, which means that you can connect your HDMI port up to a external recorder, and you can actually record for a longer duration, or you can just basically record in less compression externally. So I like that option. The 70D does not have a clean HDMI output, so that's something that I like. You also have a few other options in terms of video on the 7100. You can see here we can do up to 30 frames a second and 1080p, and then it goes down from there. You'll notice that these two options up here at the top are grayed out, and that's your 1920 by 1080 at either 60i or 50i, and those are only available if you actually turn the camera over to its 1.3 crop mode. And if we go back to there, you can notice that we now have those options available to us also. So that's kind of nice that you can do up to 60 frames, not in 1080p, but at least you can do it in 1080i. So that's kind of cool. On Nikon, you also have an option of doing different quality settings. You can do high quality or normal quality. If you do high quality, you'll be limited to about 20 minutes of video at a time. If you go to normal quality, you can actually do up to 29 minutes and 59 seconds. And that is something that I actually noticed that Canon has added on the 70D also. 70D. I keep wanting to say D70. Okay, so if you look at our video options here, same sort of thing, and this is something that Canon has started doing too. They give us two different compression options for video. So we can go to low compression and get about 21 minutes here. If we go to high compression, we can do 29 minutes and 59 seconds now. So very, very similar to the Nikon, but as you can notice here, the highest frame rate that I can attain in 1080 anything is 30 frames a second. So if I go to 720p, which notice that it says 1280, which that's 1280 by 720. If I go to 720p, then I can do up to 60 frames a second. Go from 1080, the max I can do is 30. So that's basically how that works. Okay, so the other thing that's interesting about Canon to me is the fact that, and this is a usability thing. Now, obviously, the autofocus is going to play a very, very big role in how this camera functions. Obviously, if you're doing anything where you need autofocus, if you are shooting, and if you want to get a camera that shoots very, very high quality stills, and you want to occasionally be able to use a video, but you want it to function more like a camcorder, obviously the Canon is going to be the camera for you, because its autofocus, as you'll see in a moment, is absolutely phenomenal in video mode. It's kind of interesting. If I were using a camera for, like, making short films, cinema use, I would almost, from a technical standpoint alone, I would almost find myself gravitating more towards the Nikon, just because of the clean HDMI output, a few extra frame rate options. I think that crop mode actually serves more of a purpose in video mode than it does in still picture taking. So there's things about the Nikon that, from a professional, cinematography type standpoint, I'd almost prefer shooting with a Nikon. Now, notice that I said almost prefer shooting with the Nikon. And without taking into account any of my Nikon bias, the reason I say almost is because there are a few usability differences here. And one of the main usability differences is the fact that in Canon, thanks to their electronic lens mount, it is possible to change the f-stop without exiting live view. So that's something that's nice. That's something that I've always liked on the Canons. On the D7100, you also have full manual video controls, but in order to change f-stop, you must first exit your live view. It is possible to shoot and stay in live view and change shutter speed, change ISO, but you cannot change the f-stop unless you turn the live view off first. So that's something I like, about the Canon that's going to be better. And the other thing about video is, from a professional standpoint, even though the Nikon is better on paper, the downside to using a Nikon for video is something that a lot of people don't think about, and that's just third-party support. And Canon has kind of gotten to be more of a standard in video, because they got a lot more serious with video than Nikon did early on. And because of that, most all the third-party companies kind of flocked onto the Canon ship in the beginning. And so at this point, a lot of your higher-end DSLR cinema accessories, for example, like LCD screens, things like that, a lot of those actually use the Canon batteries, the LP6, which is what's found in the 70D. So a lot of those accessories use the Canon batteries, and a lot of things are more Canon specific. And you know, some of the higher end cinema cameras even use Canon lenses. So even though the Nikon actually gives you more features, it's kind of like Nikon realized that video got to be a serious thing, so they started to put more into it to kind of make up for it. But by that time, Canon had gained most of the lead, and so even though the Nikon does better from a technical standpoint, from a usability standpoint, the Canon definitely, you know, has the edge in terms of video. So it's one of those things. If you're just going to be using video occasionally, I don't think that it'll be a big deal, and but it's definitely something to consider. And of course, if you're going to be using autofocus at all, that's where it's not even really, I mean, it's definitely a clear decision. If you're going to be using autofocus, definitely go with the Canon. The last little small difference between these cameras I'll mention is the Wi-Fi. The Canon is definitely going to be better in that area. It has Wi-Fi built in, first of all. And second of all, the Wi-Fi on the Canon is a lot more flexible. You can take photos using Canon's EOS utility software, EOS Remote, I believe is what it's called. And you can take photos using your computer that way and have them send wirelessly to the computer. Or you can have your photos go wirelessly to a smartphone or tablet, whether it be Android or iOS powered. You can even go straight to the web with photos, and you can go straight to a printer. Heck, you can even go between cameras with Canon's Wi-Fi. So, as I said in my 70D review, the Canon Wi-Fi just beats the pants off Nikon's Wi-Fi option, which is pretty much limited to being able to control the camera from a smart device like a tablet or a smartphone. And you can't change any manual settings on the Nikon software. You can only do, like, you know, you can basically just tell the camera to fire, turn your live view on and off, things like that. Check out my Nikon WU1A review, and you guys will get more information on that. And of course, the big thing is with the Nikon, it's not built in, it's an adapter you have to add onto the camera. If anyone has any questions and comments, definitely just write me below. We will no doubt be doing more testing with these cameras in the future. Definitely like the video if you like it, share it. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at PhotogJTheGreat. I really love to post the photos of things I'm getting ready to review on Instagram, so you guys might get some behind the scenes activity that way. Until next time, this is Jeremy Smith, PhotogJTheGreat, signing off.